and welcome to Zoom Out. My name is Nisha, and as you know, at Zoom Out, we discuss the future of work and an important trend affecting the future of work. Today, we're talking about, I'm sure that you have seen this as well, where people keep talking about diversity and inclusion, and there's a sudden focus on these topics. So, we're talking about why is there a sudden focus on diversity and inclusion, and what can be done about it. We have with us today Neha Agrawal. Neha, I'm so happy you're here today. Neha is a diversity and inclusion leader. She's an organization culture expert, a CSR leader, motivation speaker. She's a coach and mentor. And what I really like about the fact that we have Neha here with us today is that she's actually spent 18 years in the IT industry in varied roles, but then she has also pivoted her career, right? And she is extremely passionate about anything she undertakes and making a difference to people's lives, and also the fact that she has been in this space of diversity and inclusion, and she has made a lot of difference, I think, already. So Neha, it is for me a privilege to have you on Zoom Out. Thank you. Have I missed out on any aspect of the introduction?
Oh, no, Nisha, thank you so much for having me over. It is humbling and definitely you've extrapolated my introduction. I've just begun the journey and I'm learning, but definitely I'm passionate and I'll be happy to share the little that I have explored in this space. And I hope it reaches out to a wider audience and we together make a difference in whatever way we can. So thank you very much, Nisha, for having me over.
Thanks, Neha. Neha, let's dive in, right? So we have both been talking now. It's been, I think, 2 months or more that we have been, exchanging notes on this topic. So, why do you think, Neha, has there been a sudden exponential focus on LGBT and inclusion? Why are people suddenly talking a lot more about it?
I think, it's interesting. Even I observed that even my journey has been more in last 5 years, where I became from wanting inclusion in general in life to being an advocate of inclusion and taking it as my work, changing my career path, and also be also not just inclusion but specifically LGBT plus inclusion. Uh, my personal change has been because I met a lot of people from the community, and that gives you inside stories, which changes your perspective, and you realize there is a huge gap to be filled in this space. But in general, I think there are multiple reasons in last 5 years, if we talk about specifically LGBTQ inclusion, why that has taken up a front seat is one is definitely the media, the social presence, the awareness, the acceptance. But a pivotal point has been in 2018 in India specifically, if we talk about in 2018, Section 377 of Indian Penal Code was decriminalized. So, and that brought in a lot of acceptance towards LGBTQ community, and I think that is one of the primary factors. Also, I think apart from social media, Section 377 in last 2 years, and that is my personal observation, I don't have statistics, is because of this global pandemic, a lot of people, it was a virtual medium, more global as well, uh, a lot of uh, a lot of pertinent aspects of inclusion, specifically LGBTQ, came on surface. I think people were more compassionate. People wanted to do a lot more and help out. And that whole space, at least from my lens, I see that that has also been a driving factor where people want to reach out and make a difference and create an inclusive world. So those, I think, are some of the things which have brought this inclusion, thankfully, in the forefront.
Neha, stepping back a little bit, right? You pivoted your career for this. What made you do that? What is inclusion to you? And why do you personally feel so strongly about it?
Um, okay, see, inclusion to me in a simplistic term is belonging. I mean, for me, it aligns with a core human value. Like inclusion is something which prevents dehumanization, is what I say, because nobody likes to be excluded. And we all know, if we pause and reflect, we all feel excluded in a number of ways. So while I feel that I'm very privileged in a lot of ways, sitting here and doing this podcast itself is a privilege. But in a day-to-day life, being a woman, being dark complexion, I always say the family that I come from, my deep-rooted childhood, there are so many times where your personality makes or breaks because you're not included in a society, in a family, because of who you are, you're judged, and that has a huge impact. So my take on inclusion is always on a very personal human front. I have faced what it feels to not be included, and I realized that despite being privileged, if I can, it can affect my personality so much and growing. What would it be like for people who do not have the privileges that I have, who belong really to marginalized community? Talk about intersectionality, and it's just like uh, I feel very deeply when I go and think about that. So that is where I come from, and I try to do my bit to create an inclusive and an equitable world. Nisha.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Neha. We need more people like you. I guess sometimes as women, we are conditioned to not feeling inclusive, and we don't even know we are not being included. And I think that it needs a certain kind of a person like you to say that, no, this is not allowed, and we have to raise our voice. So I think that's very inspiring. But let's get real a little bit, right? What are some of the biggest challenges in this space? Because it's not an easy space to be in, Neha. What are the challenges that you are seeing?
Uh, See, if you say biggest challenge, again, coming back to the lens from which I see in a simplistic way why inclusion is needed. See, inclusion, we can talk in corporates about a business case for inclusion. I always take it from a very human case, that is the basic. So it doesn't need a monetary benefit for leaders to buy in. The biggest challenge is we have to understand uh, the biggest hurdle I see is the mindsets. And we have to be inclusive of people who are not uh, bought in yet into this space as well. Because it is so deep wired. Centuries of conditioning has made us, who we are as a society, as individuals. So the biggest challenge is to unlearn more than learning about these facts, and breaking, those strong mindsets that have mapped within us for centuries. That I see is the biggest hurdle. I see it like a weighing scale where there is minority who are trying to bring a revolution, and then there is majority. How do we switch uh, that aspect? And that is the biggest hurdle to start with. How many, in statistical terms, how many are bought into this whole thing that inclusion is needed? If we can have more people, then we are breaking those strong, deep wired conditioning. And I think that is the biggest challenge, and that is the starting point as well.
Yeah, I'm so proud as Zoom Out that we are talking about this today. So, how, as Zoom Out, as a podcast, Neha, can we create awareness, right? Because you are talking about awareness, and I still think we are in that phase of awareness only where we need to continuously keep talking about this topic. So, for our viewers, our listeners, can you share some basics like, we talk about LGBTQ we talk about this community, right? What's the right way we should be addressing them? And if you can just shed some light on how can we be more respectful in our conversations, about them, to them, Neha, like basics of awareness. If you can, guide our viewers and listeners with, that'll be great, please.
Nisha, this is one space I can then go on if I address that gamut of terms, but very very pertinent to this discussion. And I think I'll take this opportunity uh, to just take 2 minutes to explain before even. So one is, I can tell you the full forms of LGBTQIA, which anybody can Google as well. But more important than that, I would like to take this opportunity to explain a few basic terms which if now our audience takes a pause, and if I ask you, uh, it starts with when I ask, do we know whether gender and sex are same? And even when I started this, I'm like, seriously, is that even a question? Gender and sex are same, it's male and female, right? And that is the start point. So they are not same. Sex is something which gets assigned at birth based on your biological anatomy. So if a child is born with a penis, the child is termed as a boy. And if the child is born with a vagina, then the child is termed as a girl. And then there are intersex children as well by birth. We'll not delve into those details, but so our understanding is, so sex is assigned the biologically assigned at birth, male or a female based on the genitals. Gender is something which is a societal construct. So after we say that somebody is a boy or a girl, the society expects boys to be in certain ways and girls to be in certain ways, show certain traits. So masculine, feminine, we talk about. The key thing to understand and accept is that gender is not binary. Not everybody, and it is not always aligned with the sex assigned at birth. So the society expects that if it's a boy, then the boy has to be masculine. If it's a girl, the girl has to be masculine. But gender is a spectrum between masculine and feminine. And that is where we say that gender is non-binary. And this acceptance itself is very, very difficult. We all show, right? So for example, if I have a boy cut or I go bald, then do what gender am I? So it is a spectrum we have to understand. And that brings us to two more important terms I would like to highlight is gender identity. Gender identity is an individual's identity of oneself, of what gender they are. Society expects that it has to align with the sex assigned at birth. It might not in certain people. So somebody might be born with a penis and identified as male sex, but their gender identity might be of a woman. So the person identifies themselves as a woman. And that is where the term, I'm digressing a little in that spectrum, transgender women or transgender men, when their gender identity does not align with their sex assigned at birth, right? And another important term is sexual orientation. I'm not sure if I'm overdoing this, but these are four terms we'll summarize. Sexual orientation is the attraction you feel uh, to the opposite sex or the same sex, right? So in that spectrum of LGBT, LGB, lesbian, gay, and bisexual people, uh, this is related to sexual orientation. Who are they attracted to physically or sexually? So this term is related to sexual orientation, while transgender people term is related to gender identity. So we have to understand that just taking one more thing to summarize this. So transgender people can have sexual orientation as heterosexuals, that is, they might be attracted to opposite sex, or homosexuality, that is, they might be attracted to same sex or different sex or all sexes. So there are two different things: who you are attracted to, and what is your identity of yourself, which might or might not align with the sex assigned at birth. So this gets complex, but if we realize it is actually very simple. We understand that gender and sex are different, sexual orientation and gender identity is different, and this spectrum of LGBTQIA plus that we talk about, each of these terms actually vary based on these four terms that we talk about, and then there is gender expression and some other terms which we'll not delve into. But I really wanted to bring this aspect, and thanks Nisha for asking that. So this is what I wanted to take this opportunity and explain about this. And I'm sure users, if they are peaked enough, the listeners, they'll go, and there's enough available on the internet to, understand these terminologies.
I'm so glad that you've done this, Neha, because I feel like among the many responsibilities we have if we publish something is to create awareness, right? And this is really the objective, because it's all about learning something new and respecting, what you have spoken about. I think that is another aspect that we need to talk about. But Neha, tell me something. Off late, I'm seeing this trend where on Twitter, on LinkedIn, people are adding pronouns, and you also have, I think, on LinkedIn, have you? What is this trend? Can you talk about pronouns, putting pronouns against the name, and is this a certain sign of respect, or what is it?
So yeah, it's not a trend, Nisha. It is trending maybe because more people are getting aware. So these are some of the initiatives, or these are some of the ways how we create awareness in a larger aspect. So a lot of people, I have it here as well. So I use my pronouns as she, her. That's how I introduce myself as well. And I missed out on saying during the introduction, but those are my pronouns. Now, um, why are pronouns needed, or why this trend as we call it? There are two reasons for it. One is, as I already told you, we cannot assume that the gender identity of a person is same as the sex assigned at birth. So we can't assume, based on how we see a person, that they'll have the same identity. So pronouns are related to the identity of individuals, how they see themselves and how they want the world to see themselves. So one primary purpose of using pronouns is uh, to tell people who you are and what would you like the world to address you as. It is not even a preferred choice. It is, so I don't say that I prefer to be that my preferred sex is female, right? That's a given. So anyway, we'll not delve into that. So one reason of pronoun is, as you spoke about, respect. So we know what we don't assume the pronouns of a person. We know when a person says that he, she, or they want to be addressed in a certain way. We respect that and we do that. Now, as an ally, why do I put it? For example, I get this question a lot. So if I don't belong to the community, why am I putting it? It is also so to create a safe space for everyone. People can't assume that I don't belong to the community, right? Or even pronoun doesn't talk about whether you belong to the community or not, actually. Apologies for that. It is more about creating a safe space for everyone and not assuming what their gender identity is. So it is more on that. So using pronouns, whether you belong to the community, you identify from the community, or you are an ally, it is to create a space that we don't assume somebody's gender identity, but we explicitly write and expect people to use that while addressing us.
So, do you suggest, Neha, that all of us start using it? Do you think that, more of us should, whether or not we, you know, um, like you said, right, belong to the community? I think one way of just showing that we are willing to, we are a little aware, and we are, willing to create that safe space, would be to start making these small changes you suggest.
Absolutely. And pronouns now, organizations are taking it as an initiative. Like we did it in our organization during Pride Month, where everybody's signature, we encourage that you do it. So it becomes, that's how you're normalizing things, right? You're creating that space for people. Yesterday, I was in a call with a friend from the community, and even people from the community are not using it sometimes. But the more we have people on the side where we do this, then that becomes a norm, and it is great because of late I've come across a lot of my friends and people who use their pronouns as they them. So it'll take some time to get into the vocabulary of it. But we have, that is the respect that we show to individuals for their choices. So yes, definitely encourage everybody who's listening to go back and use your pronouns. It might be very evident to you, but there is a whole world which doesn't go with binary, and we have to understand that.
Amazing. I'm so happy we spoke about that. And we made a good segue to our next section, which we will spend about say 5 minutes on as the conclusion, Neha, you did talk a little bit about organizations. So if we can just, conclude this conversation today on talking about, what are some of the specific changes that organizations are making that you are seeing, right? If we can also address what, at least as a basic, can some organizations do who haven't started even thinking about these conversations. And one more aspect is, how should senior management kind of play a very important role? If we can kind of club these three aspects and talk a little bit about how should it be addressed, whether it's an issue from the top or is it a bottoms up issue. What are some of the basic changes organizations can make in your own experience? What have you already seen, some of the more advanced organizations doing? If we can spend some time just talking about this from an organizational point of view, it'll be great, Neha.
Sure, Nisha. I'll start going back with the biggest challenge that I spoke about. It is the mindset change that we are talking about, right? And whether it is senior leadership, whether it's top bottom, bottom up, eventually what we are aiming at is creating an equitable world. And we need a buy-in from all angles to understand that it is not a level playing field. There are marginalized communities, there are privileged people, there are underprivileged people in different ways of inclusion, and we all have to address it in all forms that we can. So, from an organization perspective, again, specific to the challenge, the more experienced people are and in leadership role, if they already don't have a buy-in, it becomes as much difficult to get a buy-in. I'll not delve too much on how to get that buy-in. There are business cases, there are statistics. You can create PPTs, and it is the best selling point is branding. So one thing which I generally, against the popular belief, I say is when I'm asked whether tokenization is good, which is happening, I say let us be a little patient and accepting of starting point is tokenization as well. Frankly, in organizations I know or I consult in, also start with tokenization. We have to be patient and understand and empathetic towards people who are not in this journey. So the start point is explain it in ways that is understood and understand where the person currently stands in terms of the buying. So take it from human angle, business angle, branding angle, whatever works. Don't go spending your energies on why can't people understand on a human front. It's okay. We want solutions, right? So from an organization perspective, the start point is always awareness. Unconscious bias trainings, for example, that is where you start getting uh, into the minds of people and even realizing that the biases exist, that acceptance comes. So generally the start point is that. Um, Second is from an organization perspective, some things very simple that could be done based on if your organization has not started the LGBTQ inclusion journey, for example. You might want to start with unconscious bias, as I said, which covers a wider spectrum. So the inclusion aspect needs to be whether in form of training, there are gamification, there are so many organizations. So do for a year at least, the sensitization. Then comes where once we have a buy-in from senior leadership, which is very important, we start doing smallish things in terms of repeated messaging that the organization believes in this. We started, for example, in our organization with a simple thing like dress code policy change. So dress code policy change meant we didn't have sections on how a man should dress or how a woman should dress. So we are already making it binary, right? So we made it what are do's and don'ts in general from an office etiquette point. So dress code policy becomes gender neutral. So you're giving a message subtly because you also have to understand where your employee base is in terms of maturity. You can take that pulse giving surveys, for example, to even understand what will be the acceptance of people. Second is all your policies which already exist. Do an audit of that. Make the wordings gender neutral. Do not keep using he in some places, she in some places. So, how can you make it gender neutral? So these are some very, and I'll be very direct. These are some very non-monetary aspects which are easy to get buy-in from the leadership. So sometimes we have to be patient that it will take some while. And that is what DNI advocates or champions struggle, because they are passionate, but the leadership might not be. So, but keep going. So those are some of the starting points. But there are organizations who then go to the next level. Simple things like create an employee resource groups. So you might not have LGBT plus community ERG, but you might start with a generic umbrella term. Because when we talk about inclusion, generally it's just the gender that we talk about, man and woman, and how many women hiring and all of that. So slowly go to the next level. So I'll not digress there. But ThoughtWorks is one such company, for example. When we talk about advanced companies who do focus hirings, they have training programs specifically for LGBT plus community as interns. They have councils and they have partners with nonprofits like Periphery, Pride Circle. So there is so much to do to get into this journey and be committed. But as I said, it could be a starting point where you just feel the pressure that everybody else is doing it, and you start off with changing your company logo to Pride flag in Pride month. That start is also good, but don't just stay there for years and years. Then it will also be known, that you don't intend to do it. But yeah, these are some of the things I can speak a lot more. I'm not sure if we have time on that, but I think I've touched on some of these. One another important aspect is the policy changes. So if you've done all the basics, awareness and some simple changes in policies, then then show your intent by strategizing and making a 3-year plan for LGBTQ plus inclusion. Those changes could include gender neutral washrooms. In fact, that is the starting point, I think. And policy changes where you don't give, so your health insurance also covers gender affirmation surgeries. So, those are the next levels that you can go to. And there has to be a constant dialogue with leadership to keep moving the scale, towards these aspects. So, yeah, there is a lot happening. There is a lot that can be done with the right intent.
This has been amazing. It's been like a masterclass, Neha, a very short one, but it has been that for me. And I wish that we had more time, but I will conclude with just one thing with you, right? How and when should organizations reach out to you, and where would you kind of come in and make a difference, right? Because I feel like we need more people like you, and not every organization has somebody. So how, don't generally do this, but because this topic is so important, and I think that we have to start making it has to become ingrained, which is why I feel like asking you this. How should people reach out?
Thank you, Nisha. I am open to reaching out at any level. There is nothing that organizations can reach out at a particular point. I'll share my mail ID with you. So if an organization is starting or don't know where to start with, want a framework, want to just have a dialogue to understand, because there is this whole thing of chicken and egg situation that we don't have employees belonging to the community. So why do we even need a strategy for this? So I'll digress if I go into that, but there are so many. So if an organization or any individual is feels deeply about this space and wants to bring a difference, no matter what it is, don't shy away from asking questions or connecting to me or anybody in this space, and we'll be happy to help. So I'll share my mail ID. Does that work? And people can reach out. I'll do that.
Yes, yes. And your LinkedIn, I guess I will share that.
I'll do that.
Yeah, I'll share that on the description as well, so that people who want to reach out after watching this episode do that. I would encourage people to just have a conversation, if not anything else.
Thank you, Nisha. It was such a delight to spend Thursday afternoon doing this. Thank you very much for having me.
The pleasure is mine. Yeah, thank you for joining. Thanks.
Pleasure. Bye.
Thanks.